Hi guys, I'm back with another album share. So I wanted to show this one only because it's a little bit different than my Disney albums that I showed you guys a little while back. So as you know, vacations and larger events are always hard to scrapbook, right? Because you have so many photos and I just want them all. I have a hard time only picking the best ones. I want to include all of them because I feel like all the pictures you've taken, or a good portion of them, tell the whole story. And so I've done multiple different things. I've done mini albums, which are always a good way to document a vacation if you can get it all in. A particular size of smaller mini album. Those are always great. I've shown you my Disney albums, where they're kind of a series of albums because those vacations tend to be a lot longer and a lot more pictures, and where I mix, a bunch of different collections that have like the Disney feel to them, and, mix those in with some Disney theme supplies and kind of create kind of a general look, but it's not consistent throughout kind of thing. Well, this is an example of actually one where I picked one paper line, and I did this a few years ago. And I picked one paper line and did the whole album with one paper line, and it's a full 12 by 12. With mini albums, that's really easy to do. It's easy to say, I'm going to use this one paper line and just do the whole mini album with that. And that's generally, you're generally not overly sick of it yet at that point because it's a mini album. But with larger albums, I don't do that as nearly as often now because you do kind of get tired of that, using the same collection over and over. But this particular album, I really love how it turned out. I loved how it is completely consistent throughout the whole thing. And it's nice to have a variety. Like sometimes you're in the mood to do something like this. Like if you were to go to a crop and you only had a little bit of room to pack stuff, this would be a great project for that. You could take one collection, and you might have to get a lot of that collection, your album, your page protectors, and you're good to go. So it's a nice project to do if you have a limited amount of room to work with, or you want it to be something you don't have to think about too much. And so this is an album that I used. It was an older Simple Stories line. I think it was one of their vacation lines. So a little bit of history with me and Simple Stories. So I used to actually, excuse me, I'm going to take a quick drink here. So I used to actually sell or be like I don't know what they called them, member of Memory Works, which is where it was a thing where you joined and you could sell their scrapbook product, and then you got a commission back from it, kind of deal. So kind of like an MLM, but not totally. And that was called Memory Works. This was a few years ago. And so I did some like classes and things like that, and they kind of would package kits together. Like they would have, you could get like say Heidi's Swap, but like in a smaller collection versus what you'd get like at the store. And so it was really cool because I had just quit my job that I had been at for like 15 years or 16 years, longer than that. No, that's about right. Anyway, I just quit my full-time job to stay at home with my second baby, and or with my kids, but I made that choice when I was pregnant with my number 2. And so it was nice. I did that because I'd like to have a little something that kind of kept me in, busy, gave me a little work to do, and then helped me maybe earn a little bit of money to help, mostly just buy my scrapbook supplies. Since I was no longer contributing income to the family, that was kind of okay, this will at least give me a little bit of money to buy scrapbook supplies with, and I could get them at a discount through that as well. Memory Works so they started out just selling other supplies. Well, then they over time decided to make their own collections, and they were called Simple Stories. So then Memory Works, a couple years out, maybe 3 or 4 years after their first Simple Stories collection, which I still have, they closed up shop as Memory Works, and they actually went full on as Simple Stories. So that's how Simple Stories started. So this is one of the earlier Simple Stories collections that I used, long story short, right? Sorry. But a lot of people don't know that. And so it's really fun because I still have all my Memory Works supplies. I'm like, oh man, this is before, because when they started Simple Stories and the concept of it, it really just bloomed. It exploded. And so that's when they just kind of shut down the Memory Works kind of piece of it and created, and then just went full bore with the Simple Stories brand. So it's kind of cool. And so basically the concept of Simple Stories was having all the different cut aparts. And I don't remember how, I hope the lighting is okay, guys. I don't remember how that meshed as far as like with Project Life and those timeline. A lot of times like dates and stuff kind of, you know, it all gets kind of jumbled in your head. But I know this is what was one of the first lines that had that concept of having your 12 by 12 papers were put into places where you could cut them easily, and they would cut down into certain sizes, and then you could put them in the divided page protectors. And so that was kind of a neat, you know, it was right around that time when all that was starting to become a big deal. And so anyway, so this is one of their travel collections earlier on. You can tell it's distressed, but I used it because I thought that it fit perfectly with a Washington DC trip that my mom and I took together. And just because of the color scheme and the pictures are all like a lot of buildings, and it just meshed really well with this particular line. And so I decided I bought multiple of this line, and the whole album is that line throughout. So I just wanted to show you that really quickly and how that can look totally cool and totally cohesive, and how neat it is to have it that way, because you can really do it both ways. For me, I tend to get bored, and I tend to get like, oh man, I'm sick of working with this. And by the end of this, I did. But it also, at the same time, it's one of those I look back at, I'm like, oh, I love how this looks. So basically, it's just all, there's a few layouts in here, but it really is mostly a full album of divided page protectors. And so here I just have a title page and some kind of general pictures of DC, like your famous, you know, signs, a lot of times that you'll see in movies and TV shows, and, you know, Pennsylvania Avenue where the White House is, that kind of thing. So I just divided it up, I think by probably days, and just did it page protector style. So there's not a whole lot to talk about. And one thing I did do differently here. One, you see there's not a lot of dimension. And so I really just stuck to the collection. I think I maybe added in, it looks like maybe a washi tape, but I really used the flat stickers, and I kept this album pretty flat, which worked out good because it ended up being a pretty full album. And I think if I would have added a lot of dimension, it probably would not have worked out very well. And so, sorry guys, I'm enjoying my coffee while I do this video. And so you'll see it's very flat, which is okay, especially in this kind of format. And I didn't do a lot of embellishing. I did some very basic, usually some kind of behind, you know, background, like border strips and washi, a few stickers, kept it very simple. But because the designs on these different things were a little bit busier and had a lot to them, that was fine with me. So just going through, and so I just mixed it up. So they have like their 6x12 cuts, their 6x8, 6x8, 4x6, 2x3. So I just used a variety of them. And so here's an example of that. And this is actually a layout, but I kind of did it. I just put a lot of photos on here. So there are some like full page like spreads, but didn't like overly embellish them because then they would have felt completely opposite of what the rest of the album was. So just kept it very simple and journaled. So one thing I did differently here was, and I'll show you here shortly, an example, was I actually so here's an example. I had to go online because I did this a few years after our trip, and I had forgotten a lot of the details, right? Like Washington DC has so much history and so much information and so much historical value to our country. And so like I didn't remember a lot of the detail. Like we went on tours, we did a tour of the Capitol, we met with our representatives and did the whole thing. And I didn't remember a lot of the details because I didn't write stuff down. And so that's what Google is for, right? And so what I do is I went through, and as I was getting to different pieces of the trip, I Googled the historical information on those particular areas, and then I included them in the scrapbook. Because as I was making this, I'm like, I want my kids to be able to look at this and like learn about the history of these places and what these places were about as they're looking through the pictures. Now I'm hoping to get my kids to DC here pretty soon, but because I think it's such a valuable place for them to see. And so my journaling here wasn't just like where we were, what we were doing. It was actually, okay, so here's actually like information about these photos, like their historical value to that particular place, or the historical value of that particular place. And so so it was kind of almost like a little research project as I was doing the actual album, because I had lost a lot of information, and then I found myself just researching and wanting to include those details in here. So most of this journaling here, because most of the pictures are just pictures of things, so most of the journaling is about those things. So it's a very kind of educational scrapbook, which is really cool. So the rotunda. So here is like, okay, the U.S. Capitol housed the meeting chambers of the Senate and the House. It was very like, first floor is this, second floor is this, third floor is this, fourth floor is this. So just, yeah, kind of very good overall context to the photos. Because photos of just things can get kind of boring. Like my mom and I tried to make an effort to get ourselves in the pictures. And so those vacations for me are hardest to scrapbook, because I'm like, it's just pictures of flowers, it's pictures of buildings, it's pictures of things. I like to scrapbook pictures of people in them. And so I tend to then not scrapbook the ones that don't have people in them. But for me, this trip was about all this. And so I'm like, well, this is how I'm going to approach it then. So here I included some the 4x6, or the 6x12 divided protector. So there's, again, a variety. Here's just a regular 4x6. So I really liked, again, as usual, like you see it in a lot of my albums, a variety of sizes. So yep, just going through the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. Oops, another 6x12. Arlington. So if you really look at the number of pictures that had me or my mom in them, this could have been like a small mini album if I only scrapbooked those. But for me, it was important, because of the reason we took this trip, to get it all documented. So, and my mom and I both love to take, well, she's passed away now, but we love to take pictures, and we both love to scrapbook. And so this was fun to do. Changing of the Guard. If you guys ever get a chance to see the Changing of the Guard, it's really powerful. Sorry. Iwo Jima. We actually saw multiple motorcades. So this would have been right around the time, let's see, it was actually like a month before the elections, but it was right around the time that the economy was starting to tank. And so there were all these emergency meetings in DC. Like, so Bush was still in the White House. And then, that Obama came in, like, was elected like the next month. But, you had people like putting their campaigns on hold and coming in and having meetings at the White House. And so there were so many motorcades while we were there. And we actually did see the President's motorcade, which is really, really cool, because you don't always get to see that. You have to kind of be in the right place at the right time. And we saw multiple motorcades, and we saw like Obama and McCain go meet at the White House with, it was just it was a really cool time to be there. Of course, it was after also 9/11. And so you had, so you still had a lot of security things going on. And anyway, it was just kind of it was a very fun, this would have been 2008. Yeah, 2008 was when we were there. So, yeah, so this is when we caught the presidential motorcade. And so I wanted to include, like, I could have just included the picture of just where the president's car was in the shot, but I wanted to show kind of what you'd see in video, but you don't usually see in picture form. Like, I wanted to see how impressive the motorcade was. So I wanted to include all the pictures just so you could see how, it kept going and going and going thing, and just how really cool and impressive it was. So here's a police officer or law enforcement memorial, which is really special to us because my dad was a police officer, and he's not in the memorial. We actually, I wouldn't say lobbied, but we actually tried to apply for him to be there because we feel like, we felt like his heart attack was actually a combination of things, but we felt like the stress of his job was a part of that. And it just, because there was some hereditary stuff there, they weren't able to accept him into that. But there was another police officer that he worked with that was in the memorial that he was actually killed in the line of duty a few years ago. And, so we were able to find his name, and that was really, really special. And so, that was, another big reason why we went, just to go pay tribute to those. And, kind of a crazy story about that was my dad was actually had just gone on shift, and it was in the area that my dad would have went to that particular call. But it was just the timing of it was a few minutes off, and, his friend ended up getting killed. And so anyway, but it's one of those things where you're at home and you're listening to the scanner and you hear police officer down and you don't know who it is. You know that, my dad is there, and like, it was the most awful experience. And so I just hate that it's happening so often right now. Like, it seems like every day there are policemen getting murdered, and the state of that whole situation right now is just sad. Anyway, I won't go off on that. But it's awful. Every time I see a story like that, it just breaks my heart, because I know all those that are affected. They're brothers and sisters. They are. My dad's funeral was like thousands of officers from around the country came. I mean, they are truly brothers and sisters. They watch out for each other. And then you, of course, have the family that's truly heavily impacted for the rest of their lives. He had young kids. Just sad deal. So anyway, Library of Congress, and then we have the Washington Monument. So I just went kind of, I think I maybe didn't organize it by day because we were kind of all over the place all the time. I think I kind of organized it by place. So like the White House, the Monument, Library of Congress, all those places, I think is how I ended up organizing this album. And so, as you can see, as we keep kind of going along, there's not quite as much journaling as before. I think this is the time where and there's quite a bit there, I guess. But, we went to the Pentagon. That was also a must to see if you make it that way. The Pentagon Memorial is so heartbreaking and special and just so well done. And so this is pictures from that. And Lincoln Memorial, and then World War II Memorial. So I just hit all the memorials and just wanted to document them all. And, of course, I had to take a picture by Nebraska. And the Supreme Court. So this is just one of those albums, like you can see how it just flows really well, because they're all the same product. And, very simple decorate. Like, this is a full page spread, but it's just a simple piece of pattern paper. I used a transparency here, a couple photo corners, and I kind of let my products guide me. Like, I kind of kept an eye on, okay, how many stickers do I have left? Because at this point that I did it, I don't know that I could really was able to get more of that product. I think it was pretty much like not available anymore. But I purposely bought a lot of it over time, knowing that this is what I was gonna do. And so I just kind of, as I was making this, just kind of kept looking and say, okay, I want to make sure I have enough stickers to last through this whole album. If I had these transparencies, I wanted to spread them out fairly evenly throughout the album, so that you don't have a bunch of transparencies in the front and then none in the back. So I try to always keep those types of things in mind, like how much product do I have? And I want to have specific things that kind of are throughout the entire album, and so you don't want to use them all up front. So that was definitely a consideration as I was working on this album. Same thing with like the journaling cards and the different things. Like, I want to make sure I have enough to go last through. When we were there, they happened to have the National Book Festival, which was awesome because my mom's a librarian, and so that was huge for her. Like, being able, Laura Bush was there. Just being able to be there during the National Book Festival was really a cool deal. And so we just had a really fun time. I was on the National Mall, and my kids would have loved it because they had all like the PBS kids there. My kids would have loved it. Target dog was there, so just kind of some funny pictures kind of in the midst of all of this, but that was a really fun festival to be there for. And of course, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, all of those photos. Just lots, I took lots of pictures because I just love history, and I just love, this whole trip was amazing. That's my thing. So the National Portrait Gallery. It's another 4x6 in there. Just get lots of pictures of just all the different artwork and portraits and things like that. And then of course Lincoln, where he passed away, the Playhouse, where he was shot. It was actually under construction, but we were able to see it. And then of course me, I have to take a picture of Rosalind. I'm a huge West Wing fan. Huge West Wing fan. And Rosalind has a very impactful piece in, I think, the end of the first season. And so I don't want to give it away if you guys want to watch it. But if you want to watch, like, West Wing is a really good show. And so, which is honestly part of, like, why I was so happy to spend this time in DC, because that was one of my favorite shows. But and then some pictures of our bed and breakfast that we stayed in, and just our experience there, which was really lovely. And some just funny pictures that we took, I think in the airport maybe, or in some random mall. Bed and breakfast, and then our last day on our way to, or on the airport on our way home. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to show that to you, to show that, like, it can be really fun and cool to do an album that's almost all page protectors and all one paper line. And yes, towards the end of it, it's easy to get very burnt out on that particular paper line, but at the same time, when you're done with it, it's a pretty amazing album. And I love this. I love how this turned out. Not to say I don't love my Disney albums or my other vacation albums where I mix different paper lines depending on just what I'm working with at the time, or I pre-mix a bunch, like Hawaii, I haven't worked on that for a while, but my Hawaii album, I pre-mixed a bunch of just summery, tropical theme stuff. So there's lots of ways to approach a vacation album, or an album that has, a larger album that has one theme to it. And there's really no right or wrong. It's just how you feel like doing it at the time. And they all turn out wonderfully. So most of my vacation albums are more scrapbook pages with some divided page protectors. This one is definitely almost all divided page protectors. And so I wanted to show that because it's a little bit different. And it's one of I call it my one and done album. I'll never need to add to this. It's just completed. And I love that. It's a fun one to put out around the 4th of July holiday. And so it's one of those that I include when I decorate for the 4th. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all your comments. I'm glad this series isn't boring you too much, but I'll continue to show more of my albums. And we're trying to get a scrapbooking weekend planned here shortly, so hopefully I'll have some layouts for you here at some point to show you. But for now, I'll just keep showing you how I approach different albums and just doing layout or album shares. And until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Happy scrapping. Bye bye.